You are listening to the Healthy Happy Mommy podcast, episode number 48.
You are listening to the Healthy Happy Mommy podcast with Nikki Lee Gorovich, the faith, health, and business style podcast for Christian boss moms, so you can train from a fellow mompreneur and other experts how to run your business, raise your babies, and maintain your health, all while keeping God at the center of it all. Here's your host, organic obsessed, crazy chicken lady, and world's okayest mom, Nikki Lee Gorovich.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Healthy Happy Mommy podcast. I'm so sorry that this new episode is coming to you a couple days late. Last weekend the weekends are usually when I record my podcast, and last weekend my husband and I were at a marriage retreat, and it was our very first one. It was the Family Life Weekend to Remember retreat in Kalahari in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and it was funny because I have been wanting to do a marriage retreat for a while, but my husband was a little skeptical at first because he thought that like a marriage retreat meant that, you know, the guys stay together and then the girls stay together and then we don't really see each other all weekend. And he wasn't really down with that, especially because we don't know anybody at these retreats. So it is a little bit awkward to think that that's what it was going to be like. But this retreat, we were together the entire time except for an hour that we had like a men and women's class. But the whole entire weekend we got to be together. And let me just tell you that if you ever have the opportunity to go and do a marriage retreat, I can only speak to the Family Life one because we've only ever done that one. But if you can ever do a marriage retreat with your husband, I would definitely recommend it because it is so empowering and uplifting. You really learn a lot. You really learn to connect with your spouse on a whole different level than you ever knew that you could. For my husband and I, we have been working very closely on just reconnecting, just kind of learning to communicate better, learning to do life better together. Another tip I have, I'll give you them in a minute, but we've been reading books. Well, we've been listening to audiobooks, I should say, because it's just much easier with the time that we have. It's easier to just listen to the audiobook than actually read the book. Although I do love a good book, because who doesn't love the smell of a new book? Actually, at this retreat, they had like a little resource center where they were selling all the books and stuff. And my husband said, please promise me that you're not going to buy a book this weekend because I would rather us get it on audiobook so we both can listen to it. And I said, I know, but it's hard for me to, walk by a delicious smelling book and not buy it. And he's like, oh my gosh, I know you love the smell of books, but you need to just, take it easy for the weekend. And I'm happy to say that I did. I did not buy a book. So I did good. But I mean, gosh, like, who doesn't love to go into like Barnes and Noble and just smell the books? Is it just me? I don't think it's just me. I'm pretty sure that's the thing. They should have like a new book air freshener. I think I would really like that. Anyway, I digress. So we went to this retreat and it was so great. We were able to connect just on such a deeper level. Really learned about each other, learned about ourselves as parents, as husband and wife. And this was a Christian-based marriage retreat. So it was all about, putting God at the beginning of your marriage, at the center of your marriage, creating that oneness in your marriage that God desires for you to have, and how, God obviously is the one that designed marriage, and why it's such an important thing for us to do His way and not our own way, and why we come up against so much struggle and different issues in marriages when we go away from God's plan for marriage and we just tend to do it society's way. And I'm thinking about maybe next episode having my husband come on and talk about like the male side of it, in case you women, or if there's men listening, but in case you women are kind of wondering about how to discuss this with your husband. Maybe you want to do this and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know how I should bring this up to my husband. And my husband was one that was resistant as well. So he might be able to offer some good insight about how to talk to your husband in a way that will be respectful and, get him interested in doing it. But One of the classes that I went to that, my husband went to the men one and I went to the women one. And one of the ones that I did was about being a good wife, but also about being a good mother. And for this episode, I want to share with you some of the tips and kind of insights that I took from that portion, from being a good mother portion. And then maybe I'll share in another episode a little bit more of the stuff that I learned if you guys are interested. It's definitely some good stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I learned this weekend, I'll say that it wasn't anything that I really didn't know before, and it wasn't anything that was like earth-shattering or groundbreaking, but it was presented in a way that really made you reflect on your own actions and really get honest with yourself and, really look inside yourself and be like, have I been doing this properly? Or have I been kind of, following society's way and not God's way? And have I really been a present mother, a loving mother, a nurturing mother like I'm supposed to be? Or have I been too busy scrolling on my cell phone and worried about everything else than worrying about my child? So I'm just going to give you a couple things that I took away from this, and hopefully you find it helpful to you. So talking about mothering, it was, there's a lot of stuff here, but basically it starts off by saying that an effective mother lovingly teaches and trains her children. So obviously we would say, oh yeah, of course I'm doing that. Of course I'm, disciplining them and teaching them and training them up. But are we doing it lovingly? Are we doing it intentionally? Are we thinking about teaching them that there's different ways to do things according to the Bible? Are we looking carefully at the wisdom that God presents in the Bible and using that to train our children up? Or are we kind of just willy-nilly flying by the seat of our pants half the time, which is usually what I'm doing. I'm usually not intentional about, the way that I talk. I try to be. Lord knows I really, really try to be. But after a long day at work and I'm already overwhelmed with everything that I have to do at the end of the day because maybe my husband isn't home to help, and we have baseball and we have homework to do and we have all these other things, when my child decides that he doesn't feel like doing what I'm asking him to do, or, throws a fit, or just doesn't want to be the good little cherub that he is supposed to be, I tend to lose my cool pretty fast. And I all of a sudden forget all of that good training and knowledge that I know in my head. And who comes out? The crazy Nikki Lee, the crazy mother, the one that is not biblical. That crazy side of me decides to pop out, right? And I'm sure that that is the case for a lot of us, because that just happens, right? It just, our flesh wants to react one way, but our spirit knows that we're supposed to be reacting another way. So, this whole teaching this weekend really convicted me, because I was like, oh, girlfriend, you are just flying off the handle a little too much, and you really kind of need to reel it back in. You really need to be thinking before you speak a lot more than you are, because I will tell you that a lot of the time, my filter is not exactly functioning as well as it should be, and I never use bad language in front of my children or anything like that. I hardly ever use bad language. Sometimes it slips if I'm mad, but for the most part, I don't use any bad language. I'll say that. But all of my words aren't always kind, and they're not always patient and loving. I'll tell you that. That's the truth. And Proverbs 31:26 is not my verse, because it is not me, but I do aspire to be this. It says, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Yeah, that's not me, but I do aspire to that. I do hope and pray that God starts, really giving me that little jolt in that direction, instead of letting me just do whatever I feel like when I talk. So I have been working on that. So in addition to, training your children and being intentional and loving them, we as mothers need to be introducing them to God and helping them understand the Bible. That is one thing that I will proudly say that I have been doing for years. Since I became a Christian, which was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I have been teaching my children about God, about Jesus, about the need for them to have their own faith, for them to, get to know who he is. We read the Bible together. I have taught them Bible stories. I have taught them Bible songs. I sing, different things like that to them every night. I mean, that is one thing I will say that I do well, but for those of you who maybe are brand new to this or you haven't been doing it, it's a really important thing for us as mothers to introduce God to our children, because our kids follow what we do, right? They do what we do, not what we say. So if they see you reading your Bible and praying and they follow the example that you're setting, then they will eventually learn to have their own trust and their own faith in God, and it won't just come from you telling them that they have to. The other thing that I really loved is that the mother communicates the family's values and priorities to her children. I like this because I do this, but I don't do it that well. So what's important to you, basically? So for you and your family, you might have different values than we do, but for us, it's, really living by that whole your kids are watching thing. So make sure that you model what you say. So for us, it's like telling the truth, being kind, just the whatever different values that you guys have in your family. So we pray before meals, we pray before bed. But yeah, like being kind to each other, working arguments out and disagreements out, not going to bed angry, and being truthful and things like that. So definitely communicating the family's values and priorities. Like, this is a priority to our family. We have dinner together every night, or we don't go on our devices until our homework is done, or things like that, and making sure you really stick to them. And I would say that I'm not 100% great at that, but I feel like I'm decent at it. So these are all areas where I am working on as well. She models godly womanhood, knowing that her children are always watching. Yeah, that is not me either. I really, really, really try, but I am just being honest with you guys here that it's very hard to always be godly when there's craziness going on most of the time, right? I mean, frustration and overwhelm and just different things, everybody pulling at your attention. It's hard to be patient, loving, and kind when you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off all the time. So God is definitely working on me with this. He definitely was kind of convicting me this weekend, saying like, Nikki Lee, this is you all over the place. Like, you really need to be working on this some more. She provides regular instruction, correction, and discipline. So regular meaning that kids need consistency. You can't decide that you're going to discipline them one day and then not discipline them for the same exact thing the next day, because then they're going to think that, you're a big joke and they're basically going to walk all over you. If you're going to discipline them, you need to do it consistently. Kids need instruction, correction, and discipline. They need it. They thrive off of it because they need that structure and that consistency. Proverbs 1:8 says, "Hear, my son, your father's instructions, and forsake not your mother's teaching." So even the Bible says it. She doesn't allow her home to become child-centered. I love this. Now, if you are, this is assuming that you are married or, living with a father figure. We need to teach our kids that dad is the top priority, or mom is the top priority when it's dad, when dad is teaching. Our kids really need to see that they are not the center of our world, and that the husband and wife relationship is number one, because that is godly. God has designed marriage, that God gave us our spouse as a gift. And God's design is that he would be first, our spouse would be second, and that our kids would be third. And we need to be teaching that to our kids so that they don't think that they're the center of the universe in the house. So Proverbs 29:15 and 17 says, A child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Discipline your son, and he will give you rest, and he will give delight to your heart. So we need to be disciplining our kids without worry, without fault, without thinking that we're bad parents because we discipline. You're actually a great parent because you discipline. Because if you leave your kid to his own devices, Lord only knows what he's going to get into. He's not going to ever have appreciation for authority, for discipline. He's going to be all over the place with his behavior, because he doesn't have that structure. So she specifically guides her child in 4 different essential areas: their identity, letting them know that they are a gift from God, that they are special, that they are loved; their character, which is like characters built as you affirm their positive attitudes and right choices. So when you are wanting to develop your child's character, you want to build them up as you're instructing them and correcting them. So you want to reinforce their good character through rewards and consequences. So if they do something good, you want to praise them or affirm them, or maybe increase their privileges or give them some sort of activity or celebration. But when they do something wrong, they're going to get consequences, like a timeout or assigning extra chores or a spanking if you're for spanking, but spanking not in anger, obviously. Removing their privileges and grounding, because they need to know what it is that builds a good character. And the only way they can get their character built up is to learn about right and wrong and what's good and what's not good. For identity too, children really need to know what makes them unique, and mothers need to be great students of their kids. So we as mothers need to be paying attention to what our kids really excel at. What are they good at? We don't want to focus on what they're doing wrong, or telling them they're bad. We want to tell them what they're doing is bad, and we also want to tell them what they're doing when they're doing something right. And then we want to pick up on that stuff that they're doing right and really well. Like my son is really great at building Legos from his imagination. He's very creative. He's always wanting to make crafts and do different things. So I see him having that ability to use his imagination to build himself up. Maybe your child is really good at drawing or dancing or singing or whatever it is, and you want to you want to build that character piece. Maybe put them in an extra class to develop that character or that trait or skill. And just enforce it by, affirming them, saying wow, maybe this is one of the gifts that God gave you when he created you. Maybe he gave you this gift. And I talk about that a lot with my son. I'm like, Jesus gave you special gifts when you were created. We don't only have one, we have a lot. And as you get older, you'll figure out what yours are. And then I will tell him, right now, I see your special gifts as being kind and generous and loving and caring about others and creative and good at sports. And I'll tell him all these things and I'll affirm him so that he knows that I value him and that I think he is really great at things. But I also correct him and punish him and discipline him when he needs it too. And we want to train our kids in how to have establish healthy relationships. So we want them to learn to honor and respect their parents, respond appropriately to people in authority, and be unselfish and put others first. So we never want to allow our kids to think that they're first, that they should, have what they want all the time, that they should get something above mom or dad. When we let our kids walk all over us, they will. You can't. You have to let them, you have to teach them, honor mom and dad, and then, respect your teachers, respect the people in authority, and put other people first. Do what you can do to help other people. Be kind, compassionate, and loyal. We want to be teaching our kids these qualities. And a mother prepares her children for a life of purpose. Children are prepared as you and your husband help them understand their purpose as a child of God, discover their gifts and talents, strengths and weaknesses, see their parents loving and caring for others, and participate in serving God and others, like on mission trips, serving at church, caring for those in need, things like that. And then a mother finally helps to shape the future by equipping and influencing the next generation. So by our obviously, I'm sure you guys know that being a mother is the most important job that we have in life, because we are creating the next generation. We are responsible for raising up the next generation. And if we do a crappy job, then we're going to raise up a bunch of self-entitled little you know what's. They're not going to be very good. They're not going to know God. They're not going to be able to take care of themselves because they're going to be relying on somebody else all the time to take care of them. They're going to be entitled and think that they like can have everything. And honestly, that sounds like a lot of the like younger generation right now, the way that they're acting, it's like they think they're so entitled, they just should get everything handed to them. And that's on a lot of the parents, because the parents were, kind of like pushed into raising their kids this way without even realizing that they were doing something wrong. And I know that everyone tries their best, and I'm not knocking anybody's parenting styles because everybody's different, but the truth of the matter is that we are way too easy on our kids. We're way too worried about what our kids will think. Oh, what if my kid gets upset because I yell at him or I discipline him? Are you joking? Like, they're your child. They're going to get upset. It's your job to discipline. It's your job to reel them in when they're not acting right. It's your job. This is your job. It's not your job to be their friend or for them to like you. Their job is to honor, respect you, and learn how to grow up and be a functioning member of society that doesn't think that the world just rolls over and hands everything to them that they want. Just saying. So I hope that those little bits of tips and stuff were helpful to you. I hope that inspired you to kind of look at what you've been doing maybe as a mom or as a dad, and maybe you want to like revamp a little bit. But no one's perfect. Like I said, half of these things I don't do right either. But I will tell you that when I was listening to the woman present this information, I was like, oh man, yeah, I could really improve in a lot of areas. And at that moment, I wrote down a lot of the things that I want to do better. I want to be slower to speak. I want to be slower to get frustrated and slower to get angry. I want to have more patience and have more of a kind response when I respond back to my kids, because I tend to respond a lot in frustration because, they'll be asking the same thing for the 14th time that I've already answered them. And it is frustrating, and I get it. But at the same time, they're only little ones, and this is our chance now to be teaching them the right thing. And like I said, they do what we do, not what we say. So if I want my son to respond kindly, I need to be responding kindly. I can't tell him to respond kindly, and then if I respond with frustration, I can't get mad at him if he's not doing that. You know what I mean? So I am right there with you. I am not perfect by any means, but from a mother to a mother, I just thought I would share the stuff that I learned, and hopefully you guys can take some stuff from it, whatever you find to be useful and helpful. And then I'm going to have my husband come on and talk to the men, or talk to the women for the men, or whatever. So we will talk to you guys in another couple days. I'm going to do that I'm going to probably do it this weekend. So we'll have another episode coming out to you in just a few days. So I'll talk to you then. Bye.